Hey, what's up, Blazer fans? Welcome to We Have a Take the What podcast. I am Tara Bowen Biggs, and I am joined, as always, by Rose Harding. Hey, Rose.
Hi, Tara. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, but you have to remind me to stop accidentally hitting my table because I can see in the video, it's wobbling back and forth and it's probably making you seasick. So I'll try to keep my legs still during our discussion.
That's okay. I spent a lot of time playing a first-person shooter last night, so I know what it's like to feel seasick because those games are very shaky.
How are you? Now, you had some special visitors over the weekend, right?
Yes. My parents came, and which is lovely because they haven't been here for a while, but my basketball brain is a little exhausted because as soon as my dad gets in the same room with me, because my mom doesn't like to talk about basketball, my dad's like, let's talk about basketball. And his basketball interests are insufferable.
Like what?
Okay, so he went his undergrad degrees from UConn. So he's
Okay.
obsessed with UConn. And he
Okay.
will talk to me about the UConn men, the UConn women, the UConn men and women of the past, the people who are in the NBA. He knows them all. He wants to talk about them all. And it's just a lot. And then the other thing, his other basketball interests. I mean, he's a big Blazers fan because I grew up, becoming a Blazers fan because of my dad, but he also, because he's from New York, is a big Knicks fan my whole
Mm-hmm.
life,
Mm-hmm.
except for as of late, in maybe the last 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, I don't know how many years now, he's decided he's a big Joel Embiid fan. Uh, I don't know why, but he's a big Joel Embiid Sixers fan, which is the upside down world because I grew up with him as a Knicks fan.
Right. Isn't like the worst thing? I guess being a Celtics fan is probably worse, but otherwise I would feel like a Knicks turning into a 76ers fan, has he been excommunicated from the fan group?
I don't know. I haven't asked his
That seems
friends.
bad.
I know it's so weird because I'm like, out of all the players that you pique your interest that you're going to abandon your lifelong team for, it's Joel Embiid.
Mm-hmm.
But I think I've said this to you before, but my dad has he has a big soft spot for sports villains.
Okay.
My dad loves a good sports villain, and so my parents, they have season tickets to the Ducks, men and women's teams, and they go to watch Ducks games in Eugene. And my dad loves Dylan Brooks, my dad loves Patrick Beverly, my dad loves every pot stirrer. And
Uh-huh.
so maybe that's why he likes Joel Embiid.
Maybe. Yeah. He's a
But
pretty good troll if you like to cheer for those kind of guys.
except my dad's not on the internet, so I don't know how he
Oh.
knows that Joel Embiid is a troll.
Hmm. Maybe does he is it just that maybe the 76ers are closer to winning a championship right now than the Knicks are? And he's decided that it's time to win for somebody or root for somebody who might actually win. Or maybe it's less stressful because I know that I have to imagine that being a Knicks fan is incredibly stressful. Maybe he's just looking for a little bit less stress in his life.
Maybe so. I also kind of think that the out of in that East area, the team that's the most likely to win another championship is the Celtics. And my dad would rather die than watch the Celtics win another championship. And
Okay.
so maybe he's like, if it can't be the Knicks, it has to be somebody else. And the Sixers seem like they have the best shot. Although I don't know if I really agree with that either. I don't know if I think that the Sixers are the
Have a
best.
better shot than the Celtics.
Well, have the best shot in the East besides the
Mm-hmm.
Celtics. I don't know who it would be though,
Mm-hmm.
honestly. I think we all thought that Miami might be up there and um the Bucks.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, the
But
Bucks. Can I tell you how little I think about the Bucks
yes,
right
please
now?
tell me. Tell me.
I just don't. I am, and we've talked about this before. I am so much more invested in how the Suns are doing than I am about how the Bucks are doing. Even though our greatest player in franchise history is now with the Bucks, and it makes perfect sense for everybody who went from being a Blazer fan to following Milwaukee because Damian Lillard is now. That is not where my heart and my gut are taking me. They are taking me to sunny Phoenix, and I want Nurkic to do well. I want Nas to do well. I want Drew Eubanks. I want the Shack of Troutdale to do well. I am so much more invested in that team than I am in the Bucks.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm being honest, I also am. I watch quite a bit of Suns because I still want to watch Nurk play, and I don't care, I guess, about seeing the Bucks play. I mean, maybe if they get to that point in the playoffs, I will watch them play, but like I don't know. It's just not my favorite thing right now. Also, but I will say this. I did love the ball drama around Giannis. I'm sorry. Like, it was so great to actually see Giannis do something, and I'm not like, oh, that's so adorable. Because like I regularly see videos of Giannis, and I think like, oh, this is the most lovable NBA star thing ever. And then I saw him do this. I'm like, okay, you're just a big kid, and you are annoying just like everybody else. So good job.
You're just a big ego driven by your giant ego like everybody else.
Yes, it's fine. It's fine. It's very humanizing to see him like not make funny off the cuff like dad jokes after in a press conference. And instead to watch you do something super annoying like that, I would expect out of Chris Paul, but not out of you.
It was really weird. It was really weird to see him care so much like about the game ball. Like I understand he's amped because he just got a, career high 64 points. That's an incredible achievement or whatever. But for him to just instantly, it's like it was just that for him to instantly think this other team was messing with him, and it's like I love the fact that we now have this rivalry between the Pacers and the Bucks. Good
What a
for the
great
Pacers.
what a great rivalry though, because it like organically happened, and
Mm-hmm.
partly I will say, to credit where credit is due, partly
Mm-hmm.
because of the in-season tournament.
I think you and I were never down on the in-season tournament. I think you were not a fan of the courts, but I think that's as far as we ever got about like not liking the in-season tournament. And I love how it turned out that like the numbers were so high. People watching those games, players fighting hard for it, and everybody who like complained, like all the media members who were complaining about it, like trying to like backpedal, that like, oh, I mean, it always looked like it was going to be successful, but we just think they should tweak a few more things. It's like, just calm down. It was fine. It was fun. Can we just enjoy something that was fun?
Yeah, I agree. It was fun. And like the thing is everybody was down on it until their team was in it. Just
Mm-hmm.
like Caitlin Cooper said to us, until you win it all. And and trust me, like now the in-season tournament, to quote our favorite Blazer writer Sean Hyken, is in the prestige zone because the Lakers won. And
Uh-huh.
had maybe they might have tried to like delegitimize, like different fan bases would have tried to delegitimize it if it was like someone really small and people felt was undeserving, but like the Lakers won the first one, and now it's like everybody's gonna be like, oh yeah, of course, the Lakers won the in-season tournament, it's legit. And I'm like, yeah, but you know what they had to do to win? They had to have the refs make a horrible call in their favor to even get them there. But when I saw, here's the thing. Okay, tinfoil hat, come with me for a second. As soon as I saw all of the marketing that they had prepared for the in-season tournament, and they clearly had to prepare it ahead of time because you couldn't get all that together like in a couple of days where you found out where the actual teams were going to be. They had banked on LeBron being there. And if LeBron had not been in Vegas to do his little like Vegas PR around, I want to own a team here and yada, 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 this is a great city with great fans, I don't know what they would have done with half the marketing material that they created if he wasn't there. They're going to send him there on his day off to promote it when his team isn't playing. No, they're not going to do that. So I'm not here to say necessarily that they fixed the game for the Lakers, but like the NBA was banking on the Lakers being there.
It was very convenient.
Yeah. They're
Yeah.
also like the closest team, like the closest team to Vegas, and I'm pretty sure they're in the Lakers are in the Vegas like market, or
Okay.
the Lakers are the home team for their market. I'm pretty sure because one of my close friends is from Vegas and he grew up a Lakers fan because that's what was on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
Well,
just saying.
I'm excited to see it next year. And I think it did add interest to the beginning of the season, especially like that first weekend, because I was at the Blazer game where they won that first one. And especially for a team that was building and has no expectations, for them to have that one early like game that had stakes, it was really, really, really fun. And I think that next year a lot more people are going to tune in to those early games just to see what happens.
Yeah.
I hope I totally hear what you're saying about the convenience of the Lakers winning, and I'm wondering if what's going to happen in the future is teams who expect that they're going to contend for a championship are going to pay attention to those games so that people don't forget that they're going to be contending for a championship that year, or if it's going to go to like some of the smaller market, maybe less aspirational teams will be able to start, making money out of a strong performance in the in-season tournament. But I love it. I think it's great. I'm super excited to see more and see where it goes. I think it's more fun than the All-Star weekend. Like
Yeah.
the final build up to it, I thought was more fun than the All-Star game.
Also, there's more of an earned aspect to that than like the All-Star game, which doesn't quite feel that way. It feels like a popularity contest. It's like the difference between getting a superlative in your high school yearbook versus the difference between winning a championship on a team where you had to beat other teams. Like,
That's funny. Maybe it'd be fun if like they shifted it a little bit so that instead of an all-star game, we just had the final for the in-season tournament.
what event I don't know why I just thought of this. An event I would like at the All-Star game. I would
Besides
like,
the athletic rebounding competition.
yes, besides the athletic rebounding, obviously no. I would like a backwards game where the referees play and the players get to referee.
Oh my gosh.
And figure out how hard it is. That's the other thing I want to say is like, I think that's a really hard job for referees, and like the scrutiny of like everyone on TV being able to see the play from 8 different angles in slow motion makes it really hard and impossible for them to be as good as everyone thinks they should be, because that's not how their brain is operating. They don't have 8 different angles running on whatever speed they want to see like the action on. Like they got to call it in the moment. That is hard. With the speed of the game, that's super hard.
I like where you're going with that. Remember at Summer League when they had Richard Jefferson be he had one quarter where he was the ref. I think
Yes.
they should do more of that at Summer League. And I remember some people were so mad about that because it was like destroying the integrity of the game or whatever. But even though Richard Jefferson wasn't a current player, just getting people out there who like he like practiced for it. Like he said that he like trained, to figure out how to do it. And he worked really, really hard and he just did it for a quarter. I think it would be more fun to or it'd be fun to do more of that, whether or not it's in like Summer League or preseason or All-Star game. I like where you're going with that.
You know how they added like an extra ref to the crew in the NBA a couple years ago, or so now they have an extra set of eyes? They should reserve that spot, the extra ref, for some commentator talking head who criticizes refereeing in games. It's like if you want to criticize them on TV, that's fine, but now you got to go be one for a game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I think we're onto something. Let's continue to workshop this until we have a proposal all ready to go.
Yeah, that's right. Then we'll bring it to the NBA Board of Governors.
Send it into the league once they've done everything they can with the in-season tournament, and they'll be looking for the next thing to do to get everybody talking. Okay, well, to switch back to the Blazers, Blazers are, I would say, healthy for the most part right now. The last week or two, we haven't talked in 2 weeks because we had some fun family stuff going on last weekend. But in the meantime, since we last talked, the Blazers have gotten back most of their players who were injured. Obviously not Robert Williams, but they got Jeremy, they got Ant, they got Malcolm, and somebody else came back. Brogdon. Did I say? Oh, Ayton was out for a while.
Yes.
Thoughts, observations about how the Blazers are looking now that they're whole?
I mean, they look better. They look way better than they did before. Like they had their like first and second string point guards available. Like I'll say I still think that there's a lot to figure out for them because they've had a lot of injuries at the beginning of the season. Like that, like getting to know your team and figuring out how to play well together is still very much happening, but at least they get like reps toward that now instead of just having like random guys like being put into like kind of off positions just because they have minutes to fill. But I'm also really grateful, I'll say, for that like little period of time, because I don't know if we would have seen the emergence of Jabari Walker the way that we have had like all of those guys been healthy the entire way. Like I think that it made way for some minutes for guys that we wouldn't necessarily have seen like explicitly
Tamani. Mhm.
yeah, held for them. And all of a sudden, like Tamani, like he's still in the starting lineup. Like, look at him go. And you know, when came time to like bench some guys like in the starting lineup, I was really glad to see that Shaden was still in the starting lineup. And um I think actually like I'm happy to see Scoot coming off the bench because I think that he's feels more comfortable and more like free to like one start the game watching it and
Mhm.
then get in the game because he can like use his he can really just spend his full attention to watch the action and see what's happening and watch what the defense is doing before he has to be inserted into the game and figure out how to make an impact. And that's like a really nice opportunity for him with like out like the pressure of the spotlight that I think he started the season with.
Yeah, I definitely agree with I really like Scoot coming off the bench, and we don't need to rush him in. We don't
Mm.
need to rush him into like the starting lineup. It's lovely to have both Ant and Jeremy back because they were just so lacking on anybody who could shoot. So it's lovely having some shooters back. Although I have to say Matisse has been a wonderful he's not obviously scoring at that volume, but he's been really efficient when he does shoot. So I've liked that. I actually thought, especially the first game that Brogdon and Ayton came back, I thought they actually looked worse. And I was just like, oh my God. Um, and I think what it was is it was a demonstration of the fact that this is a young team. Because I think because even though their better players came back, like in every metric, those guys are the better, more experienced players, and their return should have just like, okay, everything falls into place. But I think this team is so young and has so far to go into being, done, that the disruption of the lineup was so chaotic. It could not be overcome by the skill and experience of the guys who actually came back. I think,
Yeah.
A Shaden, Scoot, Tamani, I think all those guys, like they had gotten really good at playing in the formation and in the lineups that they had been forging ahead with. But I don't think that they're experienced enough to be able to pivot quickly back to, okay, now here's our old thing. Like, I just think I don't think it was a bad thing, but I was kind of surprised because my eyes were kind of like, oh my God, what are we, what are we watching here? This is not where we were. So anyway, this is all I'll say. I think that is a symptom of the fact that they are a very young and developing team. And were they a more experienced team, than just sliding their experienced players back in would have been like, yay. But more, it was like they all fell on their faces and have to relearn everything all over again. And a lot of people would say that's coaching. And I believe that part of it is, I think we have a real marriage, which we knew we were gonna have all year, of coaching and inexperience, and they're just gonna have to figure it out. We have to just play games for them to figure it out.
Yeah. And I mean, I think there's a big difference between, I totally agree with you for one. And two, I think there's just a big difference between getting your stars back and slotting them back into a system that has already been ironed out
Mm-hmm.
versus your stars coming back after being injured so early in the season with a brand new team that you don't have exactly like a settled system that everybody is really comfortable operating within to like just come back to your old roles. Like people were still having their roles defined when those guys were injured, and they're still were like tinkering with lineups, and like these are still guys all getting used to each other because most of them weren't on this team last year. So like it feels like now we're kind of getting a soft reset on that season because you can't just slot back stars into a ready made like well practiced system. um so I think it's a little bit coaching, it's a little bit like the newness of all these guys playing together, and it's also just a little bit of like people still figuring out what role they're going to play, because like I mean Aiton I thought looked great before he was injured, but I would not say that his role was settled because the guys are like the lineups were still being tinkered with and guys were still earning their minutes and like they were figuring out how to use some of these guys better. Like look at the difference between how we're using Tumani Kamara now versus at the beginning of the season. And that wasn't even that long ago. Like it's December. Like we saw him getting minutes like in October, but they were not like the kinds of minutes he's getting now. And now they're like, oh, like you're a starter. You're a starter. You're a defensive anchor. Like that's not something we knew about him when we first got him, really. And we kind of got a glimpse of it in preseason, but like it really took up until now to see like what some of those what some of the potential could be long term. And I think that like this group has decided to invest in that by giving him starter minutes. But like Jabari, like again, like Jabari, like we might not have seen Jabari Walker like like get those minutes and then be like, come take them from me at your own peril.
But they
Because my
didn't.
minutes are good.
That's what I don't like about was last night. They took Jabari's minutes away. He barely played. And that was like such a disappointment. And I was trying to figure out like, is he injured? Is he in trouble? I don't know. And like I asked Danny Meringue about it, and Dan said that like Chauncey seems to like to play like 9 men and Jabari's like number 10. And so I think
situational then? Situational based on the
because
matchup?
they put him back in when they tried some small ball. Like they
Right.
did not try any small ball until later on in the game last night against Dallas. They were like, okay, we'll try small ball. I just think that it's just so weird when there's this balance between like, oh my God, we have too many good players. Because I mean, say that with an asterisk. But like we suddenly got 2 guards back, and now like we're running out 3 guards, and it's like, why are we doing this? Like, I don't know. It's like they're trying to force things to happen. Like they were cruising along with Reith playing the starting center. And then the first game, Ayton came back. They put Moses Brown in as the backup. Like I understood he had a game where he got a lot of rebounds, but like that just threw everybody off. Everyone was like, wait, we're used to playing with Reith, and now here we go. And then the same with like working Ant and Brogdon both into a lineup with Shaden and Scoot. At the beginning of the season, I fully understood, especially with, I thought we were going to need it more with Shaden, but boy, did we really need Scoot to play alongside somebody with real deep NBA point guard experience. Like, yeah, you always, play better when he was like alongside Brogdon. Or it seemed like he played better alongside Brogdon. But now I feel like he's because Ant and Brogdon were out, Scoot was forced to play a lot since he came back. He's gained a lot. And now I just see Brogdon sitting in the corner, and I'm just like, I don't know that we need that. I don't know that we need that. I don't know that we need this many guards anymore. So I don't know what's going to happen. Like, why do I even care? This is developmental year.
Yeah.
But I wanted, I guess what I'll end up by saying is like, I really understood at the beginning, Scoot needs to play alongside somebody who does it the right way. And I feel like Scoot has now done that. And I would rather have him, since they're not winning, just be in there, because now we've seen that he can do it. Like last night, first half was like, I don't even know what planet he was playing on. And the second half, he just like got it all back together. Game before that was the same way. Like we've seen that he now knows what he's supposed to do. He can't do it every game, and he can't do it for a whole game, but he's felt it in his body and he's done it. And I think we just need to give him all the chances in the world now to do that.
I totally agree. And like I go back to this thinking that like we had at the beginning of the season where Brogdon was supposed to be playing this more mentorship role and fewer minutes. And I think that we've got to the place now where we could like reasonably return to that, where Brogdon doesn't have to have 25 minutes to 30 minutes a game. Like that's just silly. And we can play these younger guys and like pair up Brogdon with guys when it makes sense. But not like ride him like he's a core member of this team. Cause I also still like have the belief that like he's probably on the move around the trade deadline. That's my feeling. I like, unless for some reason we have like health problems or something changes, it's hard for me to believe that he's gonna be on our team at the trade deadline, because he might be really helpful for one of those teams that's just looking for that extra guard who's like trying to contend. He's great for that. So like I think returning him to that kind of mentorship like role with fewer minutes, but like more thoughtfully paired with guys who need him to like be that presence on the floor, is a really good use for him now. And Ant can be that now too, because Ant, even though we think of him as like our baby Ant, like he's still an NBA vet, and he has plenty of experience now in the NBA that he can impart that like wisdom and also that like that calmness of a vet to the younger guys. So like I don't know. I have more confidence in his ability to do that now than I did maybe like a year and a half ago.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, because I think people forget that Anthony is in his 6th year in the league. Like, he's been around, and like we all do think of him as like that very young, inexperienced player who came in, but he has been in. And last night against Dallas, when he got a technical, that I was like, ooh, who is this Anthony? This was fun, because like he even did like the stand up and kind of scream thing, and I was like, have we ever seen that from Anthony? I was like, this is very interesting. I would like to see more of that, and I would like to see his teammates amp him up. You're right. I think these guys, I want to see some more of I think right now they're all watching, like holding their breath, waiting for something good to happen. But what I want to see them is more just like gassing each other up. Like,
Totally.
you can do this, you can do this, you can do this. And that kind of brings me to a couple weeks ago, or several weeks ago, we had our episode about the What Awards. And I was wondering if you have, this kind of goes to Bench Celebrator Man, any observations on that award or any other awards, people that might be doing something that we should keep our eyes on?
So I know that some of our listeners have sent us some stuff, which is awesome. I'll say for me, one of the things that I have noticed like all season long is how many of these guys like on the bench, when I see, even when they're not celebrating, are like watching the game. The young guys especially, I see them all really watching the game, which I think is really great. And I don't know if that's true for everybody, but like I see like Scoot stands a lot, even when he's on the bench. I think now that he's playing more, he doesn't do it as much. But like when he wasn't playing at all, he stood the entire game. And I really just love that like intensity and like investment in like watching the team play and like learning what you can learn there. I will say I do love a Jabari Walker celebration a little bit, because sometimes they're like small, but they're sassy. I mean, he makes like pout faces or like scowls or like what, like I don't know. He has a great face. Remember how Drew Eubanks was everything with his body? He did everything with his body. He threw his body around, and I think that Zach Collins was the same way. He'd like fall off the bench or whatever. Like Jabari's got a great face going on. Like he may not do it all with his body all the time, but he's got like great facial expressions.
Jabari does the straight arms with the fist and then stomps a lot.
Yeah.
Which is fun. And I always like, I think we talked about this before with CJ Ellaby, the hair, when the hair gets into it, and Jabari's hair gets into it. When he does that stomping thing. You're right, we did have a couple of folks send us some suggestions. Our friend Tanya Toncocker at on Twitter nominates Malcolm Brogdon, very engaged, lots of clapping and encouragement, first one up to give guys a high five or an encouraging word. I think that's really interesting what you observed, Rose, about the young guys like really watching the game, because I bet they are constantly on film watch, and now they're being challenged to like, we're not going to wait until the film to decide what we need to do better. We're going to decide by watching the game what we need to do better. I bet they've been challenged to that. But guys like Malcolm Brogdon, like maybe they don't, they they don't need to watch it as intensely, because they've been around for a while and they've played in enough games. Another recommendation came from All Good. Julio Cantu said that Scoot's reaction to his sharp dunk was noteworthy. I think that was, yes. Shaden has had some really great dunks, but so has Scoot over the last 2 games. Scoot has really driven to the hoop. And I think it was after the Dallas game, the interview with the coach afterwards, the coach said that he challenged Scoot to go to the hoop more. He said, hey, you're athletic. Like you got to make more of those runs. We know you can do it. And he said that he actively challenged him to do it. And I say, good job on the coach. So maybe it's not the coach who hates dunks. It's just everything in the air that hates dunks in Portland.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's also a certain amount of confidence that you have to go to the hoop and just like, you'd be like, I'm making this basket or they're going to have to foul me hard. Because like, it's probably not fun to get fouled hard like that at the NBA in the NBA at that speed. Like it probably hurts quite a bit to get put down like that. And it can be demoralizing when there's the young guys, I think, that don't get quite the like benefit of the whistle that some of the like vets get, to just like take those hits for nothing and then not
Mhm.
make not make the basket. So like I think that like Scoot will get more comfortable with his skill set, but I loved seeing him go like try to like to do that like linebacker thing that he does when he just decides he's going, and you either have to hard foul him or he's going to make that basket. I mean, I'll say I don't think he finishes quite as consistently as I thought he might, but that'll come with time. He just hasn't had a lot of opportunity to like go up against NBA defenses like this.
Yeah. And I think the coach is like telling him, like, do it more, like take those opportunities. I think Scoot really wants to do everything right. And so I think he maybe overthinks some of those things because it's like, I'm not ready to do that. Like, no, you have to do it in order to know whether or not you're ready to do it. So I'm happy to see him trying that. And then one of the other awards, so most improved fit. I have my eye on Scoot, and here's why. Scoot has the same pair of sweats in different colors, and so it's like yellow with black flowers all on it, black with white flowers all over it, but it's like the same thing. If he starts mixing that up, I think that will be a big sign of improvement. Because it looks great, looks cool, but like if he can take that, or if he can, yeah, if he can develop that, I think that will be like a definite sign of improvement.
You're talking about like how Jeremy Grant will like rock the same items, but like in completely different fashionable ways. Like he'll be like, here's my like really cool belt, and I wore it this time with big like flared pants, and this other time in like a kilt, and like, you know, he does lots of different stuff with the same item. Is that what you're
Well,
talking about?
no, I'm talking about him actually moving on from these sweats.
Oh,
Like, because they're nice and I appreciate them, but they're like the same level. And if he wants to step it up, he needs to move away from that, I think, into some sort of different realm, which is yet to be determined.
I noticed that Scoot has like kind of like a biker vibe to his fashion when he's not wearing sweats.
Mm-hmm.
He has these like kind of muscle tees where he cuts them up. And like granted, he's got great arms. If I had arms that look like that, I'd wear muscle tees all the time too. But like even one of the shirts he was wearing like a couple weeks ago, I noticed it's a straight up like biker convention shirt for like
Mm-hmm.
the big biker convention that happens every summer in South Dakota. And I
Uh-huh.
was like, oh, like is someone in Scoot's family a biker? Or is this just a fashion sense thing?
Oh, I don't know. That's a very good question. We'll have to keep our eyes on that. Yeah, lots of graphic tees, but I hadn't noticed the biker theme of the graphic tees. I'm gonna keep an eye on that now. Any other candidates for any of the awards that we discussed earlier you want to talk about?
I wanted to say so. Jason, who we had on the podcast to talk about the awards, sent us a picture of Jeremy's carry-on bag that he brought to the game the like last night, and I thought that was a really funny thing because it was like one of those metal carry-on bags, you know, like with like wheels, and I was like, this could be any old bag, but it had like some cool paint design on the outside, and now it looked like a really cool bag, and I was like, but I don't know if it's like if that's a cool bag or if it's just cool because Jeremy's carrying it.
That's the question, right?
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure I don't look that cool with a carry-on bag.
I think we definitely have a contender for Blazer Legend, which people may recall is ex-Blazer, who contributes in some way, either, you know, through somehow makes the Blazers better, somehow makes the NBA better, or just warms our heart. So I would like to say that a contender this year is Yusuf Nurkic for taking the hit from Draymond Green, which may signal the beginning of the end, or the middle of the end, or the end of the beginning of the demise of the Golden Warriors. Thank you, Yusuf, for your contribution.
And I'll just say in a way that he has often sacrificed for the Blazers by putting his face out there.
Yusuf Nurkic getting clocked by Draymond Green and setting off the first this is his first indefinite suspension.
Yeah, but it's just like his second suspension of the season, and his third of the calendar year, I read, because he got suspended last year in like toward the end of the season.
It's bad. It's bad.
Yeah. And this is all to say, this is like, none of this is related to him kicking anybody in the nuts.
No, that's like old. That's like so old. That's like old Draymond. The new Draymond, yeah, is just like is doing other things. And I thought it was very interesting because, this time it seems like the Golden Warriors are starting to show signs of fatigue on this. I also thought it was super interesting that Draymond did that to someone who is represented by the same representative as he has, Clutch. And the first time I've ever heard Draymond apologize. Do you remember him apologizing for his other ones?
No, I kind of remember some like non-apology apologies where he was like,
shouldn't have put his throat in the crook of my arm.
Well, I know. I think that like what we've heard from him before is like, he still wanted to like fight suspensions or like, like say how they were unfair because they were for like past behavior kind of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, but like at one point that past behavior was present behavior. And right now we're talking about new present behavior, my friend. Like I don't know how long you can defend yourself by saying like, is my reputation, because you just keep doing it. And some people have reputations for a reason because they're earned. I remember with the like, at least with the Steven Adams stuff, he tried to like act like he really wasn't doing it. He would be like, my core isn't strong enough, so I had to kick my legs out to like jump that high. And I was like, nobody believes that, bro.
That was the best excuse. My core isn't strong enough. An NBA player saying that his core isn't strong enough to keep him from flailing his legs out. That was hilarious.
I was like, you play an undersized 4'5". Like, your core is fine, buddy.
Yeah. In any case, Yusuf Nurkic and your face, thank you so much for your service. You are in our sights as a potential Blazer legend.
And I just want to say that like, there's like this other kind of like unofficial aspect of his contribution to the sport of basketball, which is that we all have these like Bleacher Report quote memes that float around for time and time again. And I'm pretty sure that Brother Needs Help is going to be around there with Adam Silver's like, whatever buddy, and Jarrett Allen's the lights were brighter than expected. So, everybody like cue that one up in your drafts because you're going to be using it again. I promise.
Okay. Well, should we switch over to start talking about Toumani Camara?
Yes. I am so excited to talk about my left-handed brother, Toumani Camara.
Me too. I loved learning about him. So I'll just jump right in and you jump in whenever you want to. So Toumani Camara was born on May 8th, 2020. Shout out to all the guys May 8th, 2000. Shout out to all the guys born in 2000 because it's really easy to know how old they are. So he's a 6'7" power forward. He was born and raised in Brussels, Belgium. Me not being terribly good at geography, I went and just to remind people where Belgium is located. It's in Western Europe. It is directly north of France, south of the Netherlands. On the east, you have Germany and a little bit of Luxembourg. And then on the west coast is on the English Channel. So if you live on the west coast of Belgium, you look out over on England. And then Brussels is kind of basically in the middle of all of that. So he was born there. His mother is Belgian and Haitian, and then his dad was from Mali in Africa. His mother is named Anne, and I don't know how to pronounce things in French. Anne Ledocte, Docte. So that is his mother. He has an older brother whose name I'm also don't know how to pronounce. Tidiane. Tidiane, maybe? I'm not sure. anyway, Tumani has an older brother, and they were basically raised by their mom. He also had a younger sister who died as a baby when she had an illness in her lungs. So Tumani has 4 butterflies tattooed on his right leg that pay tribute to his family, includes his mother, his brother, his sister, and himself. So started playing basketball in Belgium when he was around 6 or 7 years old, following in his brother's footsteps. Like so many of these guys get started because their older brothers or older siblings are playing. Belgium is not a big basketball country. Football, soccer are what is the most popular over there. So it was a little bit harder to connect and find, the basketball opportunities. He and his brother searched online and finally found it so they could watch the NCAA. That was like the first basketball they watched. They watched the Final Four, and then eventually they found the NBA, and they were able to watch the Miami Heat. And one of his first players that he really admired was W.H.A.T, and because he watched that Miami Heat finals from Belgium at like 2:00 in the morning. FYI, in Brussels, they speak French and Dutch. Tumani speaks primarily French. It's kind of like if you live in the northern half of the country, you're more likely to speak Dutch because of your proximity to the Netherlands, but he speaks French. I bet you're wondering if there's ever been any other Belgian players in the NBA.
I have been wondering this.
Well, let me tell you, one player who identifies as a Belgian national is DJ Mabenga. He played in the NBA. He actually was born in the Congo and came to Belgium when he was 17, but he identified as a Belgian player. So he was the first NBA player to ever play in the NBA from Belgium. Tony Parker was actually born in Bruges while his dad was playing international basketball. But Tony Parker has always identified as French and played for the French national team. And then Frank Ntilikina was also born in Belgium, but he moved to France when he was 3 and was chosen for he played with the French national team. So even though he's born in Belgium, he identifies as French. So when Tumani was about 12, 13, a teenager, he really got focused on wanting to be a basketball player. And this was like internally driven by him. This wasn't people coming to him and telling him that he should go and become a basketball player. This was him really deciding this is what he wanted to do. And he started talking to coaches. And eventually when he was about 16 or 17, he was able to, his coach in Belgium connected with a coach in the US who was able to find him a place to play. So he moved to Hollywood, Florida when he was 16 and played at Chemande Madonna is the school that he played. Chemande Madonna College Preparatory Academy, which is where he played. Rose, we have an origin story for a nickname. I'm so excited about this because you know how like we're not quite sure where Dominatin came from.
Yes, even though we figured out that it at least preceded now. He didn't if he named it himself, it was a lot earlier. But this is something that I think is very important to you and I, and maybe not so important to other people, is that nicknames were not self-given.
Right. So Tamani's Twitter handle is Too Many Buckets, and this is a nickname that he got when he was in high school. He says, we were playing 5-on-5 in open gym at Chemande Madonna, and I was playing really good. I was scoring a lot, and one guy took my name and changed it. He said, Tumani, no, you are too many buckets. And that was where the birth of his nickname came from. Oh, this is I have 2 other kind of fun things about this period of his life. Like I said, he went to Chemande Madonna, and I thought it was very interesting. I don't know why I thought this was interesting, but Dan Le Batard also went to that school. Also went to that high school. There's a bunch of NFL players from that high school, and Dan Lebitard, and then Tamani is the only NBA player who went to that high school. And then notable people from Hollywood, Florida. You might know the name Steve Blake.
I do know that name. Blazers legend Steve Blake.
Yes, I was excited. I went, ooh, when I learned about that. So anyway, Tumani said that his goal was to be able to play D1 in college and then go on to play professionally. So he did get recruited by a number of D1 schools. And I don't know, do you want to take it from here? I think that you, yes, why don't you just take it from here? I talked a lot.
Yeah, so he got his wish. And one of the things I'll just say that's interesting to me is that like he came to the United States to play basketball because he wanted to play basketball, but he also didn't go to one of those schools where people go just to play basketball and be like and enter that like pipeline, right? Because a lot of those guys that come from like across from overseas to play here in a high school setting go to like Oak Hill. They go to those like kind of prep schools that are like focused on basketball. But as you said, the prep school that he went to was not exactly known for their basketball program. There wasn't a lot of like NBA players that had come up out of there. So he just came here primarily for like better opportunity because basketball wasn't so popular in Belgium. And I'll say I remember reading that, you know, where he lived, the basketball court wasn't really available until nighttime because soccer players took it over during the day. And so like if you wanted to play basketball, you had to wait till the sun went down and play at night. So he must have been a real night owl considering he was watching like NCAA and NBA games in the middle of the night and also having to play ball, you know, at night.
Yeah, I wonder how much sleep he got as a little kid. Oh, I'll add one thing too, is that he really did not know English when he came over, which surprised me because when I heard him talk, the first couple times I heard him talk, like his accent is not very strong. And so I thought, you know, maybe he grew up, you know, bilingual basically because his accent, but no, he really said that he did not know the language when he got here. And he made a real effort to not speak with an accent. And he just picked it up from going to school and listening really hard and you know, learning with his friends.
That's great. So he did, I'll say he got his wish. He got recruited to several schools and he originally chose University of Georgia and played there for 2 years. And people will I was interested to at least to read that he played 1 year with Anthony Edwards at Georgia. But he stuck around after till his sophomore year, and then he entered the transfer portal, which is one of those things I always forget about because it wasn't really around when I was in college. But like the transfer portal really allows players to move from one school to another without taking that hit of an eligibility year like they used to have to take in order to switch schools. They made it really hard in the past to switch schools. But he entered the transfer portal and he chose University of Dayton, which also had recruited him right out of high school, but he had originally passed them up and chosen Georgia instead. And I don't know exactly all of the reasons why he might have decided to leave, but he did talk about how he just thought it was in the best interest of his long-term development. Maybe we're talking about minutes and maybe we're talking about leadership, but like he had a much better opportunity to kind of like explore those at the University of Dayton. And his coach, I think his name is Aaron Grant. It's something Grant. His coach at University of Dayton said that he really was looking for his younger team at that point for more of a leader, which Tumani really fit the bill for. And so he had an opportunity to be a little bit more of a leader on that team, especially because he was coming as an upperclassman, which, you know, not at some of those D1 schools, there aren't as many upperclassmen because a lot of those guys like move on and try to go pro before they're done with school. He after his junior season, he like kind of felt out the idea of going to the draft, and he eventually withdrew and went back to college again for 1 year. And after he returned to University of Dayton, you know, he had some great accolades there. He was All Atlantic 10 conference, I think that's what they're called, All Atlantic 10 conference on the third team, and he got some defensive awards. And yeah, he was selected up for the All Atlantic 10 first team and all defensive team in his senior season, or his fourth year season. And then after that is when he went to the draft. And I will say, I think that like partly, so a lot of people, especially Blazers fans, have wondered like, how was he around at 52 or whenever he was taken? I think that like there was probably some questions about his ability to shoot the ball. Like as we've seen here, his perimeter shot is not so great yet. It's he's still working on it. And so there were some like obvious holes that make it harder to transfer to the pro game. But like the people always knew he was a really great athletic defender, could defend multiple positions, and was fast and athletic and had like the NBA like prototypical body that everybody looks for. I read a couple interviews with his former college coach. Um, I think it was getting ready for the draft, and then after he had been drafted to Phoenix, he talked about how he thought that like defensively he would be able to contribute right away to a team, but then he had some kind of offensive aspects of his game that he still needed to develop more, even though he had seen him make great strides when he was at University of Dayton. Um, the other thing that I heard his coach say is that which is will be no surprise to Blazers fans, I will say, is that he never had to get on to money about his effort, how he brought it every night. He brought the intensity, he got after it. He loved like working out. And, you know, a lot of times you hear like coaches talk about, oh, he's a gym rat, you know, whatever, like loves the work. But like, he basically said that like, he never, ever had to get on his case about his work ethic or the way that he approached any game ever. He never, ever, ever slacked off. And I feel like that's exactly what we've seen from a guy who brings it every night, plays hard every night, plays good, solid defense. And, you know, maybe we'll see that like jump shot come along.
One thing that struck me about his college time is that his coach from Dayton loved talking about him.
Yes.
Really loved him, and talked about how it was like what he was looking for in Toumani was the leadership aspect of it, because he had an extremely young team, and Toumani was basically the only player when he transferred to Dayton who had any college experience, and he leaned heavily on that for Toumani, and that was something that was enticing to Toumani as well, as to have the opportunity to learn how to be a leader.
Mm-hmm. And this was clearly a coach who had tracked him for longer than that, like who had known what his game looked like when he was in high school, because he tried to recruit him to University of Dayton back then. So maybe it was just like the right time for them to come back together and play together, because I'll say this. I don't know if I've ever, like when we would like do these things, Tara, I don't know if I've ever like looked up a guy and seen their college coach ride so hard for them, take every interview to talk about him like ever. And maybe that's a little bit of a product of that University of Dayton is also not really like a big like producer of NBA basketball players, but like I really like found that to be touching, just how many interviews existed of his college coach there to talk about him and hype him up. And I want to say, so this is another thing that I found very interesting about his little journey to the NBA and his journey to being a Blazer, is that there was a little bit of a controversy on draft night about Toumani Camara, because on draft night, Malika Andrews reported that he was being included in the Bradley Beal trade. And so people didn't know if he was going to be a Sun or not. Like there were a lot of people who went to bed that night thinking he was going to the Wizards.
Oh, really? I didn't know
Yes.
that.
Yes. And like ESPN said it on air and they never issued a retraction. People tweeted it out. Some people issued retractions, some didn't. And so there was a lot of like kind of like there was a lot of questions up in the air about whether or not he was going to be a Sun or not. So everybody was really happy when he was announced that he was going to be a Sun, and then turn around like, you know, weeks later he was included in the next deal with the Blazers that brought Nurkic to Phoenix and sent Ayton here, and Camara was included in that trade. So like there was multiple times where they were like, he's a Sun, he's a Wizard, he's a Sun, he's a Blazer. And so
Yeah.
he never actually suited up for them, but despite the fact that he's had like multiple reasons to believe he was a Sun and then something else.
Well, and the Suns folks really liked him because he did play in summer league, and he had a very nice summer league, and they liked him there. The only thing that I would add to the college part of the bio here is that I always look up and try to find out when guys may have played each other against each other.
Right.
And there's not many of them anymore. But on March 7th, 2020, so right before the pandemic shut everything down, when he was playing for Georgia, they played LSU. that had Trendon and Skylar on that team.
I'll say Skylar Mays.
And
That's right.
LSU won that game by 30. So ultimately Tumani never played in the NCAA tournament. He played in the NIT a couple of times, but he never played in the NCAA tournament. Another thing that I thought was, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I always am a little interested in like how many hidden gems were like players that end up being really good in the NBA were hidden on teams that like were not considered like NBA pipeline teams, because it's just a scout who did a really good job on for some organization that decided that like this guy was for some reason underrated in terms of like how they're perceived in the like high school to college to pro pipeline, because like obviously those guys all scout, you know, teams like Kentucky and Kansas, but like who's really going out of their way to go watch teams like University of Dayton go play, you know? I think about how like Matisse was sort of discovered in high school by accident because he was playing against Zach LaVine. Like there are a lot of guys out there that I'm sure are exceptionally good talents that people have just not had the opportunity to scout, because it's hard to scout that many guys all across the country. And it really depends on kind of the ecosystem around them early in their career to put them into the right pipelines for NBA talent scouts to notice them. And anyway, I was just thinking about that because like maybe a lot of those guys who are like drafted late in the second round who do really well, maybe a lot of them come from places that are just a little bit unorthodox and not in those like traditional pipelines that we see.
Yeah, maybe it took a little bit longer for people to recognize them, and they're frequently older, I think. And those older guys, I think sometimes they have a higher floor, but their ceiling might not be as high. But man, Tumani's ceiling still feels like it's pretty far away. I mean, it still feels pretty high. But to kind of go back to you about like being recognized, when it did come time for him to go to the draft, he worked unbelievably hard to get himself recognized in order to be drafted. So he went to this thing that was called the Portsmouth Showcase, which is for the guys who aren't necessarily the most visible, but it's a chance for them to like go there, and if they get recognized, they may get an invite to the combine. So there's various things that you can do to even get invited to the combine, and one of them is to go to this Portsmouth Showcase, which he participated in. Right after that, he had 5 different workouts, and at least one of them, if not more, I think one of them, maybe only one, but he had like 5 total workouts where but one of them definitely was a scout workout. And I know about this because he talked to Rafael Barlow. On one of my main sources of information about him is from this interview that he did with.
He's so good.
Yeah, we got to have Rafael on because I want to hear him talk about all these guys that he scouted, and how they're doing now. But anyway, he had like a pro day where there like hundreds of NBA scouts came and watched, or international scouts came and watched him. And then he had 13 additional workouts after the combine. So, I mean, he traveled and worked so hard, and he did work out for the Blazers, during that time. But I was just like stunned at how many workouts that he did and like how much he must have been on the move. I loved there was a little bit of his family, or somebody made a video kind of about his journey to the NBA, and they focused on they did a draft night segment, and that was really fun because late second rounders aren't there, because you don't want to go there and not be called. But he said, like, I did not work this hard to come from Belgium, and he's a lot of pride in his country and where he's from. He's like, I did not work to come this far from my home and to be separated from my family to not hear my name if they're going to call my name. So he had his brother and his mother there with him. And so he was there when they called his name. So he got to go shake the assistant commissioner's hand. But it was cute because they showed, his mom like ironing his suit for him to get him all ready, and him walking into the Barclays, and he wasn't with like the mass of all of the, top prospects who all like come in together. He was just kind of like walking around outside, like, which entrance am I supposed to go to?
And he was like seated in the seats, not like on the floor, right? He was seated like up in the stand.
I think it looked like they maybe had a box or maybe there was just a box that he went to.
But they weren't like at the table. He didn't have like a table.
Yes. Yeah, he wasn't at one of the tables down there on the floor. But I just loved that. That, and he was so excited to have his mom and his brother there. He's very close to his family. I don't know what his mother did, but I did see that after he got drafted, she did retire. Like, she was only able to see a few of his college games. And she was definitely there at summer league, because I saw an interview with her at summer league of her and his brother talking about it at summer league.
It's so interesting to me, those guys that like are so self-possessed that they just know what their route is going to be. Like, you know how we talked about how like for some players it's like basketball found them, or like they found basketball, and like Tamani Kamara's story to me is like someone who was self-possessed about what he wants out of his life. He wasn't there to be told like this is what you should do, this is what you like shouldn't do. Like, he was like, this is what I want to do, so I'm going to do that. He went to the colleges that he wanted to go to. He transferred when he wanted to. Like, he came to the United States to like not necessarily a basketball like powerhouse school because he wanted to. Like, these are all things that he just like mapped out for his own life, and he's like, that's what I want for me. And so he wasn't going to be told, I'm not going to go to the draft just because I wasn't explicitly invited to be there. Like, I'm going to the draft because this is what I want for myself. And it really, like, I'll say I love guys like that, because I also think those are guys whose spirits are very hard to break. Like, that's a persevering spirit right there.
Yeah, as I was learning about his journey to the NBA, I couldn't help but think about Ayton's journey to the NBA, and how like basketball kind of like came and grabbed him and took him from home and plopped him in the United States and was like, here, go, we're gonna make you into this person. And like you said, Tamani seemed like he was the one who's like, this is what I want to do, and here is how I'm going to do it. I'm going to talk to the people who are going to help me with it. And you and I've talked about this before, about like the people who are in that sort of middle ground where they aren't coaches or agents necessarily, but they're trying to put kids in front of people so that they will get noticed. And sometimes you get a little bit of an ick reading those stories. And I never got that with the story of Tamani. He just seemed like he was, set on a path of achievement that was going to get him to his goal of playing professional, rather than like, I want to be the number one pick. It was like, I want to be a basketball player. And the people around him seem to have helped find him the places where not just he could come and be a star somewhere and like put them on the map. He chose places where he could grow and he could get better. And like, maybe it's different because, he wasn't like the same kind of like high level prospect as like DeAndre Ayton was, but it just felt like the path that he took was more natural to him and who he was. He didn't feel like he'd been sort of like ripped from, like, even though he left home, it didn't seem like such a traumatic separation from his family and from his country.
Yeah, I felt the same way reading a story. And you're right. I think because we just did DeAndre Ayton, I was thinking a lot about DeAndre's story and how like there was a lot of like question marks around like how much agency he had throughout some of the process, some of the like, I'll say the placements that he eventually went through. And it wasn't until like his mom intervened and was like, no, we're taking control of this again. Like, that you felt like he had like a strong sense of like, this is what is best for me, and for what I choose, or what my family helps me choose for myself. Tamani really felt like he was in the driver's seat of his like career path from like an early time, which I really appreciate, because like I think it's really hard, quite frankly, to have that, especially when you're a top basketball prospect. I think there are a lot of people who want to drive that bus for you. And maybe that's one of the benefits for him, for being kind of an under the radar type of player, and like a not a top prospect type of guy. Like, because DeAndre Ayton was picked out because of his body, because of his size from a very young age, and everybody knew that he could make it to the NBA. I bet you that when Tamani Kamara was developing his game when in Belgium, and then at that prep school in Florida, like, that's not how people were looking at him. like with dollar signs all over him, you know. And maybe that was like all the difference in terms of him like deciding what he wanted for himself and setting the course instead of having people try to influence him into setting it into the direction they think he should go. Because there's like I think so we've talked about this. There are a lot of people in that like space between like high school to college and then college to pro where like you don't have access to an agent or to other professionals. And it's really, I think it can be really hard to know who to trust to help you set that course for yourself. But for somebody like Tumani Kamara, who's like, I already know what I want, I just need to find the person to help me do that thing, not to make decisions on what to do next, is like maybe a better like way for you to be able to exercise your individuality in that way. Like, I'm just so happy for him that he's like doing the thing that he wants. And I don't have any like ick feelings about like whether or not he meant to arrive here or not. He did.
Yeah. He had, his agent is a guy named David Poutier, Putterie. David only has 2 clients, and is from Belgium. And, it was really hard to like find any names of people associated with Tumani's rise into the NBA. You know, there's his coaches, his college coaches were very excited to talk about him. This guy, his agent, like I recognized him from being in a lot of pictures, but he's like not really in the spotlight. And from reading like a couple really short like bios about David, his whole thing is about basketball in Belgium and helping Belgian athletes make it, you know, in the professional leagues. And that's something that kind of comes through about Tumani with like kind of what he wants to do with his life. And maybe someday when he's ready to give back, he's talked about building up basketball in Belgium to give more kids like him the opportunity, you know, that he didn't have because Belgium basketball is just not that big in his home country. But that is all to say that I think this guy who is his agent, seemed to be really focused on his client and Belgian basketball, you know, because his name wasn't all over the place. It was hard to find him and it was hard to, you know, figure out who he was, where sometimes in other cases, not necessarily in DeAndre Ayton's cases, but in some other cases that we've read about, like we know the names of all the people that were around him. They got them because they really wanted to get their names out there. That didn't seem to be the case so much, at least in this one.
I wanted to call out that the coach of, I couldn't remember the guy's name, the coach from the University of Dayton. His name is not Aaron Grant, it's Anthony Grant. And the thing that I wanted to talk about briefly was just that he mostly has been a coach in the college sphere, but from 2015 to 2017, he was an assistant at OKC. And before he took the head coach job at University of Dayton. And one of the interesting things to me about that is that that Thunder team, wasn't that like right at the end of the Scott Frost era to 2017? Not Scott Frost.
You mean
Scotty
Brooks.
Scott Brooks.
I think it might have been. I mean, it was like at the end of their run,
right,
and relevancy in that iteration of the team,
right. So 2017 was the year that Kevin Durant moved on, right? And then after Durant left, Scott Brooks was there for another couple of years with just Russell Westbrook.
So they would have worked together, is what you're saying.
Right, yeah. Okay. So what I'm saying is that they would have worked together, and now he's the top assistant in Portland. So they may have like a nice way of being able to communicate with his coach about how to like really coach Tumani Kamara, because they have a connection as being working on the same coaching staff. And obviously it's somebody that I would have thought that Brooks would have hired himself. This is also a coach that he might have that he probably hired himself for his own staff.
Yeah, that's a good find. He's definitely was on the Blazers radar, and I know that people in Phoenix were super bummed that he was included in that trade.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. I've seen a lot of people talk about how he is like a throw-in, and like I can't believe we got him for free. I don't know if I believe that. based on everything I've read about him and all the ways that people have had like eyes on him, I don't know if I believe that he was a throw-in. I think that to the fans, the perception was maybe that he was a throw-in, but like throw-ins are usually chosen for a reason over other guys that could potentially be thrown into a trade. And I have to believe that there was some like significant interest in him specifically, and not that he was just like an addition, a bonus gift or whatever in that trade. I can see him being like a significant draw for in terms of interest and whatnot.
Yeah, and
Anyway,
I can see why that why I could see that Phoenix may have actually had to think about it. Like is this the person that we want to part with right now for
yeah.
considering who's coming back in return. Anything else you want to talk about with Tamani? I have a few just like random things that I learned about him.
Well, I do want to talk about one brief thing about him. Tamani Kamara is left-handed, but he is quite ambidextrous. I don't know if you've noticed, but he shoots right-handed, except he seems to shoot his threes left-handed. So he shoots well with both, although I will say he does need to work on that three-point shot, so maybe he should see what the right-handed situation looks like over there. But I do think that there's some really like great aspects of being left-handed. Speaking as a left-hander, is you just learn to do a lot of things in an ambidextrous way because the world kind of demands it of you. And in basketball, I think that can be a really strong asset, is that you might not be able to like predict which like a guy's favorite side, but like when all out, like if all things being equal, they would prefer to go like right over left or left over right or whatever. Like I think that those ambidextrous guys can be a little bit sneaky because they have like some really strong skills on the other side of their body, because the world forces you to be a little bit more right-handed than you might otherwise be if the world were built for left-handers.
I think that will be an advantage to him. um I was just thinking about his dunks. He has some pretty great dunks too.
Yeah. And can I say that my favorite moment of this entire season maybe is when um Tumani got that block to send the game to overtime against Utah. He defended so well, and he blocked the ball like right as time was expiring to send it to overtime, and Brogdon gives him like a chest bump into the next dimension. It's so big. He's so hyped. It was such a huge block, and he was so hyped about it. It made me so happy for him to get that, to like one, have that kind of success, and like to also like have that validation. And also, just as a Blazer fan, I was like, when is the last time we were ever sitting there staring down the clock with like one possession game and we needed to get a stop and we actually
Yes,
got it? Like, it's so not our experience as a fan base. That is not what we're
totally.
used to see. We're used to seeing that ball go in and us losing at the last second.
Right. Or we're used to like, winning or going into overtime because they made the shot, not because
Right.
they prevented the other team from scoring.
Yeah. But this was like a straight up, like he blocked a layup.
Uh-huh.
He went and he blocked a layup, and it was like right as the time expired, and I was like, what did we do to deserve this
Yes.
this like one-on-one king?
Well, and he just never stops. I love that. I love his effort. It's just he just never stops. And he's not the only one on this team right now, but like, yeah, he's just always in. And I just love how he relishes playing the best player on the team. Last night in the game against Luka, it was really weird because I kept looking up, and every time I looked up, Shaden was guarding Luka, and I was like, why on earth is Shaden guarding Luka? And then I went and looked at the actual like possession numbers, and Tamani actually guarded him like 3 times more than Shaden did. It was just that Luka was perfect on shots when Shaden was guarding him. I just kept going, why is Shaden not that Shaden's like a terrible defender, but he's not the right one to put on Luka. So Denver must have been doing that on purpose.
I feel like Kamara is on defense what we wanted like Mo Harkless to be on defense.
Mm-hmm.
Like as far as like the way, like, I mean, it's not
He's
exactly the same, but I think that like what the thinking around Mo Harkless was like develop a 3-point shot and make him like a total like smotherer on D.
Yeah.
And he got like pretty good at both of those things, but never quite where they like wanted him to be. And Kamara, I feel like his defensive ceiling is probably higher than Mo's was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's relentless. which is really fun to watch.
I want to know what kind of coffee he drinks, because I feel confident he drinks coffee. Well, there's and because I say there's anyway, Belgium, there's a lot of coffee culture in Belgium, but I need to know what kind he drinks, because I feel like it's probably really good and I'm missing out.
Okay, I have a few other random things about him.
Okay.
For hobbies, he likes doing puzzles. He says, I'm a big puzzle guy. I do actual jigsaw puzzles, the big ones. And the biggest one that he's done is a 10,000 piece puzzle, which as a
Oh my God.
puzzler who like usually maxes out at 1,000, 10,000 is huge. I think that was during the pandemic. And other hobbies that he has, drawing and dancing. And I'm like,
Oh.
we need to know more about that second one.
Wait, did he dance at FanFest?
I do not remember. We'll have to
Because
go back
they
and
usually
look.
make those guys sing and dance at FanFest.
Yeah, I don't know. We need to go back and find that out.
I don't think I have space in my house to do a 10,000 piece puzzle unless the pieces are super duper tiny.
Yeah, no, you have to have a whole entire room dedicated just to puzzles. When he was a kid in Belgium, he went to a camp that was hosted by Bismack Biombo. So there's a really sweet interview where he was being interviewed by Phoenix Media, and they were asking him who he was most excited to see in the NBA, and he said he really wanted to meet Bismack Biombo because of like the full circle moment. And it was like, also we have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. But great that you want to meet Bismack Biombo.
Who wasn't even in the league like this. Like when he said that, Bismack Biombo didn't have a contract yet, because Memphis signed him like in October or something. Memphis signed him like at the very last second because they had so many injuries.
Had he just finished up with Phoenix? Because was he on Phoenix last season?
I think that's right. But he was like a free agent until like really late this season. Like Bismack Biombo was like, remember at the beginning of the season when all of a sudden Memphis didn't have Ja and they had all these guys who were injured and they couldn't play, like Marcus Smart and whatever, like they signed him late. And now I'm really bummed because, I think that Bismack Biombo's first game in the NBA this season was against Portland. And now I'm really sad I didn't look at this.
Oh, that is so true. I have to go back and watch it on record to see the beginning or the end, see if they ever missed each other. But it also, like, Bismack Biombo came to Belgium, and that was like a big deal for him, and it kind of goes back to the whole theme of him being really proud of Belgium and wanting to build up basketball in that nation. During the pandemic, he did not go back to Belgium, though. He did stay in Florida. I couldn't tell if he has a girlfriend or if he has pets. We always do that. We always look, and I couldn't tell. He did say in one interview that he stayed in Florida during the pandemic with his girlfriend, but I don't know where that is anymore. So I think that's about all I have on Tamani, but I'm super excited about him. I think he has like I said, a high ceiling. I think it's great that he is in the starting lineup and he remains in the starting lineup even when folks are healthy. And I have just a lot of hope that he's going to be a big part of this team moving into the future.
Yeah, me too. And I will say, like, one of the like great or like refreshing parts about this team is that I feel like we have guys who serve like strong defensive purposes in ways that like we hadn't really built toward before, and like, or like more recent iterations of the Blazers. Like we had guys where like we were, I felt like we were always like let's get our defense serviceable enough to have a potent offense that can win games. And now I feel like we went out and got guys like Matisse Thybulle and Kamara who like are really there because they serve like strong defensive purposes and they are really helpful on defense. Like, I don't know, like, how sometimes you just see those teams that are built around like a starting five that are like really potent offensive players and like a 1 to 2 defensive anchors. Like I feel like we have that now.
We're getting there.
Yeah, we have that.
It's been a rough couple of weeks for defense.
Well, yeah. But I mean, I think I can see the vision at least toward that, where you have this like more balanced style than we had in previous years. So, yeah. Also, I love a left-handed player. I love Rodney Hood. I love Ed Davis. I love Kamara. Chris Murray is also left-handed.
Mm-hmm.
We got some nice lefties.
I'm glad for that for you. Should we go on to takes?
Yes. Tara, it is, when we're recording this, it is December 17th, 2023. And I'm here to ask you, what's your take?
So I went downtown yesterday, purely to go see the Christmas decorations and just enjoy that, because I haven't been to do that in many, many, many years. I went down to Pioneer Place, where I remembered that adorable story about Scoot. As soon as he got here, he landed at the Jupiter Hotel and he still had on his jersey, and he ran across the street to Pioneer Place and ran around Pioneer Place with his Blazer jersey on. So I did not run into him, nor did I run into any Dallas Mavericks who were also at the Jupiter Hotel. What I did run into at Made in Oregon was the fruitcake that is made by the monks in, I can't remember where they are in Oregon, but there's a monk, they make fruitcakes. And here's my take. Good fruitcake is good. People got to stop trashing fruitcake. Okay, bad fruitcake, not good. Good fruitcake, super good. That is my take.
You think that you're saying that you think that a lot of people throw the baby out with the bathwater, and that like they've had bad fruitcakes, and so therefore all fruitcake is bad, but they
Yes.
just need to get themselves some good fruitcake.
They've never had good fruitcake.
Okay, I can get down with that. I have not had good fruitcake.
So good, especially when they use like the real fruit, like they use dried fruit instead of like fake candied fruit, and when they like use like a batter that's not just like a weak batter, but it's like a really like strong buttery batter. It's yummy.
What kind of fruit was in this fruitcake that you had?
All the kinds.
All the kinds. All the kinds of dried fruit.
Yeah. Lots of it.
Okay. I love that take. I've maybe I need to go out and find myself some good fruitcake and report back. My take this week, and this comes back to like some personal feelings that I have just in general about the world, but I need the NBA pundits to stop calling Zion Williamson fat and out of shape. I don't like it. I think that there are ways to talk about his conditioning as a player, if that's what they're trying to say, without like making it feel like it is personal, and also about like what his body looks like. Because I have heard guys like this year talk about Zion in a way that I feel like is very disrespectful and very like, I don't like it. It's just very negative to be talking about him and say like, look at him, he's out of shape, which basically is saying, when I look at him, his body doesn't look right to me. And I don't want that like perpetuated in the world for anybody. NBA, regular life, whatever. I just don't want us to talk about people's bodies that way. And I want them to find more nuance and more ways to say that in a respectful way, because I don't think it's nice to comment on anybody's body like that. So that's my take. I need you NBA pundits to stop talking about how Zion is fat and out of shape. He's not. Look at him play. We know he's not. He plays a sport at a level that none of us will ever dream of. He's amazing. And if you think he could be better with slightly different conditioning or a slightly different body composition, say that in a way that is more respectful of who he is and what he's accomplished. And here's the thing is, I'm not even the biggest Zion Williamson fan. I just don't like the way people have decided to like talk about him now. So anyway, that's my take.
Here, 10 out of 10. No notes. Yeah. Yes. Listen to Rose, everybody.
I'll say this. I know that we're more sensitive when we talk about that kind of stuff with women, but I think that we need to be just as sensitive when we talk about the stuff with men or other people. It's just not okay. It's not nice. And Zion Williamson is exceptionally good at basketball. Let us not forget. He has dunked on us more than once.
Yeah, I mean, it just boggles my mind to think that with how Zion plays, they feel like they need to say that. It's just like,
right.
It's just, be more creative in your commentary and leave his looks out of it, and acting like one look is bad when it's just like, it's natural. That's that's his human form. That's his body that gets him through the day and makes him also, by the way, an incredible basketball player.
And some of the best basketball players in the league right now are people with bodies that are atypical to what is like considered the NBA prototype, right? Jokic has a very different body than people expected him to have, and he's the best player in the NBA right now. Look at Luka Doncic. He is thick and big, and he moves like you would never expect for a guy who's built like that, and he's incredibly good at basketball. Maybe we should need to expand like the kinds of possibilities that we see out there for what like the perfect NBA body looks like, you know? There was a time where like I was thinking back to when I was younger, people used to say that Charles Barkley was like fat. And I looked at Charles Barkley playing and I looked at it, like I look at him now and I'm like, he looks regular. I don't know why people said that about him. It was just because he looked slightly different than what they thought he should look like, but he was also, again, very good at basketball. So maybe again, we just need to think a little bit more like out of the box of what we think a good basketball body looks like.
Yeah. Here.
Okay, off my soapbox.
All right, Rose. Well, we better wrap it up. It's been, as usual, a pleasure talking to you. Anything you want to share with folks about like where they can find you or anything like that?
Yeah, you can find me at Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram at Rose L. Harding. You can also find me in the We Have a Take Discord. Tara, where can people find you?
They can find me at TCB Biggs on Twitter, and they can find the We Have a Take podcast at We Have a Take on Instagram and Twitter. Thanks everyone for listening. We appreciate you all so much, and especially everyone who sent in suggestions for our awards. Keep them coming. We really appreciate them. We still have many months ahead of us that we're going to have to keep ourselves entertained with this wonderfully developing team. So yes, keep your comments coming. We appreciate it so much. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.